Hey, Kratom quitters. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Libby, and I am here with Jacob today. How are you, Jacob?
I'm doing well, Libby. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for asking. For today's episode, I interviewed Matthew. He was so lovely and so sweet, and it's a great episode. So I'm looking forward for everyone to hear that. I think today we wanted to chat about some posts that we're going through the Quitting Kratom subreddit and potentially the 70H subreddit. But yeah, there were some questions that popped up and we were like, well, why don't we just answer those? And so, yeah.
Yeah, we thought it could be cool to kind of provide some answers in real time to some questions that are popping up online. So there's two we're going to do. The first one is from, I think, the largest subreddit and the oldest one for Quitting Kratom, which is just our Quitting Kratom on Reddit. And this is a pretty straightforward one. The question and the post is, when do withdrawals peak? I'm sitting at about 25 hours since my last dose, and I feel a little bit depressed and angry, slight runny nose, but really nothing else. When do you guys find withdrawals start to peak? Great question. There's a bunch of good answers in there. Ours will probably be slightly similar, but for me, I always found they tended to peak between like the 36 and 72 hour range. It's hard to really give you much more specifics than that because every quit was a little bit different and every experience was a little bit different. But usually at some point along that timeline, you'll kind of get the worst of it, and then things would slightly get better from there until you're out of the woods. The only other thing I'd probably add to this is this person, maybe they are not super dependent on Kratom, or they're lucky and maybe they get to have a mild withdrawal experience. It's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, I would say I think it is really dose dependent. Like, how often are you redosing and how much are you dosing over the course of a 24-hour period typically? My withdrawals usually started about 18 hours in, and I felt like they were peaked by 36 hours. But, there were times earlier on in my Kratom usage where like I was only using twice a day. And so it would take the withdrawal longer to kick in, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's really dependent on how much you're doing. Obviously, if you're doing less, it's going to take your body longer to realize like, oh, we're missing something. So
yeah, that's a good point too on the dose dependency and all the product you're using, all those variables. So much goes into that.
I've also heard the 70H gets out of your system faster, so you go into withdrawal faster with the 70H.
I've heard that too, which would make sense. I know it's a very short-acting alkaloid. Well, that brings us to our next one. So this is from a relatively new subreddit. This is quit_70H. There's also a quitting 70H subreddit that has a lot more subscribers. I think like around almost 2,000, whereas this one only has about 20 because it just started. Why are there two quitting 70H subreddits, you may ask? Well, the original one has a very narrow view on medicated assisted treatment, and the new one is very much open to all types of discussions. You can make your own inferences about one or sub to both if you're interested. Anyways, we're not here to really talk about that, but I just want to provide a little bit of context. But this one was very interesting. The post is obsessive thoughts to do one more. So the poster notes that, I know I started this group, so this must be from the person that actually started the group, so that's kind of cool. And I can safely say I don't have all the answers, neither do we. But this one is baffling me. I've been off 70H since March 20th, and I feel like all I do is obsess over another tab. I've tried walking and working out when I feel this way, but it only helps temporarily. Does anyone else notice this? Honestly, I feel the hardest part of this detox is the withdrawal. Withdrawal doesn't necessarily mean physical withdrawal where you get sick, but an empty feeling, hard to describe. Never felt this way before. And now that I got kicked out of the other subreddit, I need all 20 members to help. So a little bit more there than just the question. So, hey, we're here to help. And you only got 20 members. Maybe we can add a little bit of color to this question. So there's a lot to unpack there. I think a few things. One, this was always the hardest part for me for withdrawal. It wasn't the physical crap, the restless legs, the lack of sleep. All of that is absolutely and totally terrible. And I would never want to go through it again if I don't have to. But for me, the worst part was after that ends, the feeling of like hopelessness and just obsessive thoughts like this person is talking about. I had that too. I think the best advice I could give is having relapsed so many times on Kratom, I can tell you every time was pretty much, I want to do one more, or it's only going to be for today, or today's really bad. I needed to get through today, and then tomorrow I'll get right back into my sobriety. Never worked that way. Never, ever, ever worked that way. And I don't think it ever really does once you cross the threshold of dependence and addiction. How did I best deal with that? It's just kind of taking that experience that I already had and kind of looking back and sitting with that feeling and applying it. Sounds like simple. It's really hard to do. And it's probably like, it's not something where there's an easy fix, but I totally hear you. You're in the hardest part from my perspective is like that 2 weeks after to like the 2 months. I think that's when you're in the biggest danger of relapse after you get out of the acutes. Yeah, you just got to fight through those feelings, dial into a meeting, all kinds of stuff. What do you think, Libby?
I would agree with you that the mental obsession is the hardest part about any addiction, but Kratom in particular has a very loud voice in the mind. I felt like it was really, really, it really wanted me to pick up again. Like it was very convincing, and
Yeah.
even in comparison to like many other substances that I've done, like I felt like Kratom was like the loudest convincing one. So I was just thinking, what would I do if this OP was me, you know? And so I think that probably like I would look into the naltrexone because it doesn't have the opiate in it, but it would still potentially block the cravings and be supportive in that way. But I think in other ways, like that would be a really good time to like dig into the toolbox and be like, okay, we could do like the maybe tomorrow I'll pick up trick, or what can I get involved with that will take my mind off of this? That's a really good incentive to like pick up a new hobby, or I'm going to start reading one book a day, or like whatever you got to do to really, you know, divert the brain away from that obsession, because it is that it's the obsessive thought. Yeah, that really can take you down.
Those are awesome suggestions, like the Vivitrol for medication and everything else you said. Yeah, those are really, really good strategies to combat that.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do.
Cool. Well, I think we can get on to the interview, but before we do that, if you're listening to this and you have a question or have any topics that you'd love us to, or you'd like Desiree and Nolan to talk about, or if you want to hear from Charlie, send us a note or send us your questions. We're happy to address them. And if you want to even come on the show and be a guest, hit us up on social media or email the podcast. We'll link all that in the show notes. And I think with that, we'll wrap up the intro and have a great week and stay Kratom free.
Hey, Kratom quitters. I am Libby. This is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. Today I'm here with Matthew. Matthew, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Matthew. I'm 40 years old. I'm a teacher, married with one sweet puppy. Her name is Sweet Pea. And yeah, that's me.
What kind of puppy is she?
She's a Pyrenees mix.
Oh.
So she's a super floofy dog. She's 50% or so Pyrenees, and then she's got some golden in her, a lab in her. She's beautiful.
She's going to be a big girl.
Yeah, she's up to 70 or so pounds. I think that'll be her max. But yeah, if she was a purebred, she'd be over 100.
Yeah, they're big dogs.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like to do for fun? Do you like to go on hikes with her or anything like that?
We do our daily walks every single day. She gets a few miles per day, but my wife is a farmer, so she gets to go to the farm all the time with 2 other dogs and, you know, really gets a lot of exercise and has the time of her life out there. But yeah, we like to go on daily walks, things like that.
I love dogs, so I always like to ask.
Yeah, we're dog people too.
Yeah. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about like, your Kratom experience, like how you first came in contact with it?
Sure. I'm a nicotine vapor, so obviously I frequent the smoke shops. About a year and a half ago, I went in there and, the whole wall full of kratom powders, extract, all those things. And so I was like, hell, I'm going to give this a try. And I immediately fell in love with it. It was like a natural antidepressant for me. And it was on from there. So it was, December 2023 was the first time I tried it. And yeah, I was hooked right away.
Had you ever heard about Kratom before? Had anyone ever told you about Kratom? Had you had any previous experience with it?
No, not really. I knew that an in-law had tried it before and he really liked it. But other than that, no, I didn't come across it from any of my friends or family. Never saw any advertisements for it outside that big neon lights outside of the smoke shop. I just went right in and I didn't really have any background knowledge about it. I think the smoke shop guy was like, hey, yeah, you should try this, but that's about it.
Okay. And I know you said you're a nicotine vapor.
Yeah.
So obviously you have a nicotine addiction, but have you ever had any other types of substance abuse addictions or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In my 20s, a lot of marijuana, alcohol, even dabbled in the harder stuff as well. And that led into my 30s as well with marijuana and alcohol. I come from a family where addiction is common and, that didn't miss me either. So I definitely have a history with different substances.
Okay, so no stranger to substances.
Nope.
Can you describe what it was like when you first experienced the Kratom? Like what kind of Kratom did you first try?
I started with the powder and, was doing like a tablespoon or so per day with, I can't pronounce the name, like Mangda green powder. Pretty much limited myself to that in the early months before I found the extracts.
Okay.
Yeah, but immediately it was this mild, comfortable euphoria. I felt comfortable in my own skin. Issues with my anxiety slowly went away. And so I thought I found the miracle drug.
How long did that go on till it became a problem?
It's hard to say. I would say the first 6 months, the use was daily quickly for me. It became a daily habit quickly. And that's no surprise for someone with an addictive personality like myself. But I think the first time I realized it was an issue was I didn't even realize at the time I was going through withdrawal. I was in school. I'm a teacher. And all of a sudden, I'm getting super sweaty, runny nose, going hot and then cold and hot and then cold. And it didn't register to me that I was going through withdrawal until obviously even though I was sick, when I got home from work, I still took the Kratom. And then within 20 minutes, I'm feeling good. And so that was like my first real moment that this stuff may have gotten its hold on me and got its grips on me. So I tried to test it after that to see, okay, maybe it was withdrawal, maybe it wasn't. And I was like, all right, I'm just not going to use it for a couple days. And then all of a sudden, the same symptoms appear, the hot and the cold, the hot and the cold, and the stuffy nose, the depression, the anxiety, these things start kicking in. And I was like, uh-oh.
As far as the timeline goes, was that before or after you started with the extracts?
Afterwards.
Okay.
I think I was into the extracts within 3-4 months, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But still, I was mostly a powder user.
Okay. And what was the progression after you realized that there was indeed a dependency problem?
Well, it didn't stop me from continuing on. It certainly didn't stop me. If anything, my use the volume increased. And I found myself at 2 heaping spoonfuls per use. I started to need to take it right after work, whereas it would used to be like at night, right after work, I had to start taking it now and at night. And by the time I got to month 8 or 9, I'm feeling it in the morning, right? I'm not using it before work, but now I find myself in withdrawal during the workday. And it kind of made the work brutal for a while.
You mentioned that you have a partner, wife, or
Yep.
Okay.
Wifey.
Did she have any idea what was going on?
She knew I was using the Kratom. I never hid that from her. And I told her how much I liked it, but I could tell that she became less and less comfortable with me using it. She started to notice the volume, and she's always noticed that about me. It's like there's no middle ground. It's either don't do it at all or go to the extreme. And she knew that from me and my family. That's kind of our personality types. But I could tell she was looking at it and saying, like, you're using a lot now. I was always with my little Gatorade water bottle where I would put it in, fill it up with water, shake it up real good. And I was just sipping on that thing. And sipping on it straight from after work up into the evening, sipping on it on the weekends, on vacation as well. Like, I think she could tell. And I did my best to play it off like everything was good. But deep down, I was nervous. I was definitely nervous that this thing was taking hold of me. And good God, the amount of money I was spending.
Yeah, I can relate.
Tremendous amount of money. I got one of those Kratom quitting apps where it's that simplified thing where it tells you how much money you saved and how much powder you haven't used. Gosh, I must be up to a couple grand at this point. And my clean date is the first week of January. That's when I went to rehab.
Congratulations. So that's 4 months?
Coming up on 3.
Okay.
Right? January to February, February to March, March to April. Yeah, just past the 3-month mark. Definitely a good feeling.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'm curious about at what point was this is out of hand, I really need help, and rehab is the answer.
Well, when it got to the end, it started to really go downhill last October. But I wasn't certain that what I was going through was directly related to Kratom. I knew that I would experience withdrawals, but then it got out of hand and the panic attacks started coming in, the panic attacks. And I was absolutely petrified. I had no control over, it felt like I had no control over anything in my life. And these crying spells, all of these things. So I have a background with mental illness, and I've had to go to the hospital before, or, a hospitalization program before. And it happens once or twice every couple of years. So I was just like, oh, here we go again. But after I stopped taking it, I went to a doctor, a psychiatrist, and I kind of just admitted everything. And they gave me comfort meds like clonidine and gabapentin and things like that. And again, the symptoms went away and I felt a little bit calmer and I felt like my world was coming back. But I was back on Kratom, 5 days later, after I tried to quit. So I don't have the willpower to be able to do this on my own. And I think it really surprised my wife. I was like, well, I think I might need to go to rehab. I think I need to go to detox for it. And thank God for my wife, immediately on board, immediately supportive of the whole process. Didn't think about herself, didn't think about what it's going to be like with the husband away for the month. And now all the responsibilities are on her. I'm a lucky guy. I'm a lucky guy. And, I called. I had been, what's the term, sober curious for a while, but I went and called a rehab facility that my mother actually went to years before. That's what gave me the idea to go to this place. And it was a very, very good decision. I'm really, really happy. I went, swallowed my pride and, met some amazing people in there along the way. Just incredible people, the people you meet in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm super lucky to have had a supportive wife throughout this whole process. She could have easily walked away. She could have easily, criticized me or done any of those things, but she didn't. And I'm super grateful for that.
I know you said you had a really good experience in rehab. Did you meet anyone else that had a kratom problem in there?
No, I did not. I was definitely the only one. And listening to your podcast over the past couple of months, it sounds like it's pretty much par for the course. I had a couple buddies in there who were hooked on fentanyl, so they knew about kratom. They didn't, but they knew of some people who used it to ease withdrawals. And, they would say, oh, I heard that withdrawal was brutal, yada, yada, yada. But luckily, the doctors and the nurses there did know what kratom was. And they did have patients in the past who were hooked on this stuff. So they detoxed me the right way, the same as before with the clonidine and gabapentin and then everything for the throat and the stomach, anything that might be going on. And I really did detox in a seamless, harmless way. And so all the stars aligned, and I didn't have to explain to them what it was. They weren't checking out this on Google. They knew exactly what it was. So I'm lucky because I hear from your podcast and from other things I read about that some of the doctors have no idea what it is. I guess because this thing is still in its infancy in the addiction world. So I was lucky. I was definitely lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So you said that the withdrawal was pretty seamless. Did they give you Suboxone or was it just comfort meds?
They offered it to me and I said no. I didn't want to. No shade on Suboxone users, nothing like that. MAT is MAT. But for me specifically, I did not want to. And I knew from trying to kick it about a month prior to that these comfort medicines were good enough. They would get the job done. And I guess I was worried about, it's a superficial understanding of what Suboxone is. I have, but I do know that those withdrawals can be brutal as well. So eventually, once the kratom got out of my system, though, they gave me the naltrexone or the naloxone. And I was on that for a couple of weeks. And then the day before I left, they hit me with the Vivitrol shot.
Okay. Have you redosed on the Vivitrol or just?
No, I haven't, but I did get a prescription for the pills again to take every night. So I haven't been taking them. I kind of had this weird depressive episode when I started to take them, but I know that I have to get back on them. And they were super helpful with the cravings. I have a 90-day supply and I know that I got to get back on these things.
Yeah, that was my question, was whether or not you found them to be supportive. I am curious. We don't have a ton of people that we talk to that essentially go cold turkey in rehab. So I am curious what your withdrawals were like with the supportive medications.
It was smooth.
Were you sleeping?
I went there the first day, but then I could not sleep for the next 5. I was going insane, but the insomnia was the worst of it because of the comfort meds. I was feeling okay. And, you got that initial pink cloud when you're in there. You're like that initial happiness from your sobriety, from your newfound sobriety. And also the adrenaline too, just being in this new environment. And, it wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad. But the insomnia in the beginning was brutal. And, they give you some nighttime non-addictive medicines like trazodone and things like that. But overall, I'm looking at the people in the detox wing. You got the detox wing of your rehab that'll keep you in there for a week. And then you go into Gen Pop. Right. And that's when you get your roommates and all that good stuff. And I'm seeing people go through it, man. And me, I have these minor discomforts. It's more of a mental battle. But man, I'm seeing people go through it. All the gross things you can think about that goes on with the withdrawal. I'm glad I didn't have a roommate during that time. I feel like I dodged a bullet.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Do you know how much you were taking there towards the end?
Yeah, I got it down. I tapered myself down to about 10 grams a day. But at my worst, which would be like that summertime before in the early fall, it's hard to tell because I moved over to the extract shots. I never got past one a day, but I also always had powder on the side as well. And so it's this combination of taking those extract shots for $20 a day on top of a couple scoops of powder. And so the withdrawals were bad. And again, I don't take this before work. So I'm just going through it every day at work, just praying to get through the day and get home so I can redose. The month leading up to quitting, I had it ready to go in my car. So the second I got out of work, clocked out, got in my car, had my water bottle, I had the amount I needed, and I was dosing on the way home.
I want to speak to this because it sounds like you and I had a very similar experience. I mean, I didn't go to treatment for Kratom, but I have been to treatment twice, and I haven't talked about it much on the podcast, but I loved rehab. I think it was such a good experience. I also met amazing people. It felt really good to be in community during that time. I felt really safe. So I thought it was important to just voice that for anyone listening, that rehab is an option. And I think it often is talked down upon, people never want to go, but it was awesome. I had no responsibilities. All I had to worry about was taking care of myself and getting better. And yeah, for anyone that's wondering if rehab might be the right choice for them, it was an incredible experience for me. And it sounds like for you too.
I can't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And if you have the means, if you have insurance, the initial part where you feel ashamed to go, yada, 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 it quickly goes away. And the people you meet, man, some of the greatest people in the world are junkies and what they call alkies. And just the warmth of that community there, either with the small cliques you had, I had some buddies that I was close to, but just everybody was okay with, they knew you would be in bad moods a couple times a day, and they knew they would as well. And so the amount of mercy we gave each other when we were moody, but also the pick me ups when they see that you're down, and they would pick you up and vice versa. I can't recommend it enough. If you feel like you can't taper, if you feel like you can't beat this on your own, there is a place for you. And it saved my life. You know what I mean? And I'm very, very grateful for that experience. Now, I don't want to go back, of course, but I'm really happy that I went. And if you're at home listening and you're on the fence about it, go. If you can, do it.
Yeah, it's absolutely a privilege. And I understand that. But I think if you can, you're thinking about it, I would definitely suggest going for it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
You only stayed 30 days, is that right?
33 days where it was 7-day in detox and then 3 weeks in Gen Pop. And then they wanted me to step down into something called a PHP, a partial hospitalization program, which I did for 2 weeks. And some of my buddies from rehab stepped down to the same place and were in that program. I didn't do anything like IOP afterwards, which is an intensive outpatient program. For the listeners, if you're not familiar with the term, you would go and it's like group therapy 2 or 3 times a week for a couple hours each time. But I did do as close as I can, the 90 and 90. So I still go to AA meetings because just NA, there's just far less options. I still go to them 3 or 4 times a week. And when I'm not there, I'm at the Kratom Quitters online sessions every night at 8. Another thing I highly recommend. I'm sure you guys know them. I know you've had them on the pod before, but just a great community of people just going through it together. So even though I didn't have the IOP, that extensive therapy, I am getting incredible value for the most part in going to these meetings. Help me keep my head on straight, help me fight the cravings, things like that.
So your continued recovery kind of looks like in-person AA meetings and then online Kratom meetings. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's about it. But it keeps me grounded, centered, and I still go to these meetings with my day one sober chip in my pocket, and I got my mom's as well that I'll hold on to. She passed away due to addiction a few years before, and that really got this whole spiral out of control with the Kratom. I think I was trying to grieve her death, and I found this Kratom to be like a mood booster. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But the meetings have been good. And again, the people you meet, they're huggy. They like touching. I mean, I've always been a little cold to the touch, but they're super sweet and super supportive. And they're always trying to see how you're doing and see if you got a sponsor yet, things like that. So it's been good, but a lot of hugs, a lot of hand holding.
For sure. And are you working the steps and working with a sponsor?
Not yet. I still haven't gotten a sponsor. It's so weird. I'm afraid to go up and ask somebody. Sometimes in the meeting, other people will raise their hands and share, and I'll find myself just staring at that person going, well, I wonder what he would be like as a sponsor or things like that. And so I don't know what to do. I'm actually thinking about the next meeting, just raising my hand and being like, I'm sponsorless. I don't know what to do. But still, I'm working the steps, but superficially and very, very slowly. The good news is I know I don't have control over it. And I have to be honest with myself that this is a problem that I can't do on my own. But it's only so far just going to these meetings will take you. Mm-hmm. And I hear about the importance of sponsorship almost every meeting. Somebody's talking about it. So I know I got to do this. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to raise your hand and ask for a lot of meetings. They'll have at the end, they'll have people like raise your hand if you've worked all 12 steps and are available to sponsor. And so you can just kind of look around the room and see who raised their hand so you could go talk to them afterwards. But I don't know if you are in any meetings like that.
They had that in rehab. Actually, in rehab, we would have 1 to 2 meetings a day, and they usually were the bookends, the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And they, once or twice a week, they would bring in outside, what they call graduates of the program. And they were great like that. If you're looking for a sponsor, head on over to the cafeteria. We got a bunch in there for like a meet and greet. But I haven't been, at least I don't recall, to any meetings in the outside world where they did that. Where they were like, hey, raise your hand if you're a sponsor or if you want to be a sponsor to somebody. So I'm starting to remember names from the meetings, and I'm starting to stay at least a minute or two after the meetings and trying my best to open up. Yeah, I'm naturally very reserved, and so it's been tough.
Me too. I had that problem with AA too, but I think it was actually really good medicine for me to learn how to kind of step outside myself and meet new people. And I think that was part of the magic of AA for me. It didn't really work for me long term, and I know that it doesn't work for everybody, but there's magic there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you could give our listeners one piece of advice, what would it be?
There's no better time to quit or start the quitting process than now. If you are early on in the Kratom game, but you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking that this may be an issue for you. You may have tried in the past or keep trying, but if you're listening to us talk right now, you must be starting to recognize that this is an issue for you. And like we were talking about 20 or so minutes ago, go to rehab if you can. You don't have to do it on your own. Tell people in your life that are important, even though you might be embarrassed, yada, yada, yada. Tell them that you're struggling with this and give yourself that sense of accountability, and also give the people in your life an opportunity to pick you up. So whatever you're doing, it's only going to get worse if you keep up with it. And you'll get through the withdrawals. You'll be okay, but there's no better time to quit than now.
Really, really beautiful, solid advice. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Was there anything that I didn't cover, didn't ask you that you wanted to go over?
I don't think so. Stay away from the extracts. That's definitely for sure. Stay away from the tablets. And if you've heard of the 7-OH, steer as clear as possible away from that as well. But no, just to the listeners at home, you can do this. Yeah. I'm weak-willed, so if I could do it, you can do it as well.
Beautiful. Well, it was lovely talking to you, Matthew. Thank you so much for meeting with us today.
I appreciate you guys. I love your podcast, long-time listener, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So I'm really grateful for y'all and wish you the best of luck with the interviews coming up.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful night.
You too. Thanks, Libby.